What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Team Fish Knuckles YouTube channel. Today we have another interview with world players, and this time around we have France. And if you just want to introduce yourself and exactly where you're located at.
Yeah, hi. I'm Stefan Ivanov from France. I'm the number one ranked French player. I'm from Paris, France.
Okay, sweet. So I guess the very first question is, what exactly got you into Pokemon?
Well, I was always into Pokemon, like the series in general. I mean, growing up, I watched the anime, like I think a lot of people did, and I got the Pokemon, the blue version for my in yeah 2000, so for my ninth birthday.
Hmm.
And then growing up, I still liked the games and continued playing, but I had cards when I was younger, but never really played that much, except from the trading card game on the Game Boy.
Okay.
And then a few years ago, like 5 years ago now, um, a friend of mine told me, who I also knew through the Pokemon community, so someone who I talked Pokemon with, told me that he was I learned that he was playing the card game, so I was interested, and I asked him to teach me a bit what are the good decks, how do you play it at a competitive level, and everything. So he taught me, and I went to the national championship in the June 2010, and it was great community. I liked the game, so I continued playing.
Okay, sweet. So you kind of touched on just a little bit of why you kept playing, but what's made you stay in Pokemon for so many years?
Yeah, well, as I said, one reason is the community. I mean, there's a lot of friends and acquaintances through the game, which and I reason to keep coming back to the game. If I'm honest, another reason is that, well, I have had good results, and I mean, I've been national champion a few times, so I like play the games, and I like winning. So, when you win, you tend to like you don't want to stop, and you think, okay, I can do as well or better next year. I want to get a good result at Worlds at some point. So and well, give me something to do on my weekends and on my free time. Play test and try to get better at the game.
That's very true. I mean, if you start winning, why quit when you're always on top, right?
Exactly. I'm not always on top, but when I'm not on top, I want to get back on top, and I want to to win again to prove to myself that I'm not bad. That it was just I just did that one time, and I can still win.
That's very
So.
true. Okay, so I guess the next question is, what's your favorite tournament? You don't. It doesn't have to be one that you won. Maybe it could be, but it just favorite tournament because it stuck out for some reason.
Yeah, the favorite tournament I entered was actually the one I did the worst at ever. It was the first time I went to Worlds in 2012, 3 years ago in Hawaii, and it was my first Worlds. I had been a national champion, so I got the free trip, and it didn't really well. People told me what to expect, but it's still very different seeing it. And yeah, when I got there, saw all these players from everywhere in the world. It was it was really wonderful. I like almost magical. I had an amazing time meeting people, just playing Pokemon. I lost a lot. I went 1-6 at Worlds, so it was really not for the results I did, but I liked the tournament. But yeah, just for the experience, the what the it was a great weekend, and yeah, first time I think that's why I see a lot of players um, who are excited to go to Worlds, and many people who already went there tell them that it's amazing. I think that's definitely the experience I had.
That's true. I mean, experience world is always a great thing to do, and I mean, I think it's cool even if you don't have your invite to still go to Worlds. Just say like I don't if you have the money, I guess.
Yeah, well, that's I think easier if you live close to there. I mean, when you're in France and you have to travel to the United States just to go to Worlds, there are few people who do it if they're not if they don't have the invite.
Yeah, that's very true. Okay. So I guess what has been your biggest accomplishment at Worlds? I know you talked about that you won nationals, but what do you think is your biggest accomplishment,
At Worlds, you mean?
or just overall in the game?
Well, don't know. The thing I'm proud of is being sort of consistent in my results at nationals. In the four last nationals, I won twice, got to the finals once, and top four once. So made at least top four in the four last years. So pretty proud of this, even if there's a bit of luck involved as always. So yeah, also um, won the Prague Cup in 2011. But if you don't know what that is, which I guess a lot of people, of international people do, not it's was the other main European competition a few years ago. It only lasted 2 years.
Okay.
The main European competition is the ECC in the
Yep.
Netherlands
True.
at the beginning of each year in February. And a few years ago, there were in 2010 and 2011, around I think October, November, something like this, there was the Prague Cup, which had the ambition to be another tournament in this style. It was in Prague in the Czech Republic,
Mhm.
and there were less people. It's further away for people in the west of Europe, like France, Italy, all that. But it was a pretty nice experience, and I went once in 2011. There were a lot of French people who went there. We trained as a team. It was a nice experience actually. It was the first time I really play tested with a lot of people from France, and yeah, I ended up winning. It was the my first big tournament win, so I think It was a long time ago, but I'm a bit surprised because sometimes I think other European players recognize me from that. Even this year, I've met uh, people who were like, "Oh, you're the one who won the Prague Cup that one time, right?" And so yeah, that's maybe I guess it's what the first big result I had.
Okay. All right. So, how many times have you won nationals? I know you said you won it a couple of times.
Well, twice,
Okay.
2012 and 2014.
Okay. Okay. So, I guess the next question is, what are your top three favorite decks of all time?
Of all time. Okay, so I've been playing since 2010, so that was the SPE era.
Okay.
So I decks from before that I haven't experienced. So this is only about what I happen to play or play against, I guess.
Okay.
So my favorite deck would be it's not a very popular deck actually. It was Empoleon, Lithian, Dusknoir from uh, last year's City Championships, like around November, December, January of the last season.
Okay.
It's at the time basically. Um, so that was when Legendary Treasures came out, and there were the new rules that said that you could not attack in turn one, which slowed up, I guess, things. And a bunch of people actually in France and in Europe um, thought that maybe evolution decks would get more playable at that time, and especially well, the best attacker as an evolution was Empoleon.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine, Mehdi Afi, who's I guess, probably best player in France, or at least definitely the best deck builder.
Okay.
He well told me that the deck was great, and I always liked Napoleon, so I was excited to try the deck, and it did great. I mean, the first weekend of regionals that um, in this format, so with the new rules and with legendary treasures, uh, actually we were surprised because so Mehdi and some other players from the Paris region um, had brought this Empoleon deck, but there were also people from the north of France who independently came out with the same idea, and there were even a few German guys at our originals who came with the same deck. So like people from all over had the same idea to play Empoleon,
Yeah.
and well. Over time, most people stopped and played more traditional decks like Virus and Genesect or Blastoise or Darkrai Garbodor was played at the time. But I kept playing Empoleon because I thought it had really good matchups. And what was funny is that there are a few people still playing Empoleon, and in France, Empoleon really affected a lot the meta game. Like Leafeon and was in the deck mainly for Blastoise,
Yeah.
and Blastoise at the time, don't know if you or the viewers will remember, but Blastoise was quite a popular deck, I think, in the world at that time.
Hmm.
And in France, it was basically absolutely not played anymore. Like people who had played the deck for 6 or 9 months, who had literally played almost nothing but Blastoise, will stop the deck and start playing Rebor or something because they because Blastoise just lost to Empoleon, and there were too many good players in France playing Empoleon, and that was too risky. Like the Wagner brothers, who are players from Netherlands who come sometimes to our regional tournaments.
Hmm.
They teched, especially against Empoleon in their decks when they came to France, because they knew that some of us would be playing the deck. And it's funny because it kind of warped my the view I had of the meta game. Like in France, the recent Genesec decks would play Hypnotoxic Laser and Vibrosity Gym because it would help, and like one or two Max Potion because it will help them in the Empoleon matchup.
True.
And so when whereas in the rest of the world, or I guess the rest of Europe, I think people will play more traditional builds of the deck, like with Scarrow Bridge and everything.
Yeah.
And the reason I like the deck is that even though the other French players kept, with time they distanced themselves from the deck, I kept playing it, and I played it at the ECC that year, which was the last tournament played in this format before the next set came out. And I made top 8 with the deck just because people didn't, well, they knew the deck, but they weren't prepared to face it, and it had really great matchups against basically all the fields except for Darkrai Garbodor, which it had basically an Atolos too.
Yeah. True.
And so I lost against Darkrai Garbodor and beat almost everything else, and just had a great success with the deck. And so the reason I identify a lot with the decks, but still right now I have in France I still have a reputation for playing Empoleon all the time, and like even though always trying to play Empoleon again and see whether it could maybe be playable, even if it's most of the time not.
You
And
play for Worlds?
yeah, I'm not sure I will play Empoleon for Worlds, but at some time I went to a league challenge with Empoleon Sumpert. That was before Ancient Origins came out, before the ban of Lysander Trump card.
Yeah.
And Empoleon Swampert was this cool deck in this format that like just set up stage 2, not even with Archie, just playing the Pokemon and and the evolutions on top of another. It had I checked the deck a lot against Seismitoad, of course, because stage 2 are vulnerable to Seismitoad.
True.
And I played so I had Rough Seas and like 3 Prinplup and 2 of the Marshtomp, the stage 1 of Sumpert.
Mhm.
And I won that challenge. It was a small challenge, but there were a few good people playing. And it's funny because like it had some people wondering whether I would dare play the Empoleon deck for the national championship, just because of this reputation I have.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was you see I tend to talk a lot about Empoleon whenever someone gives me a chance to. So
That's fine. I have a friend who also loves Empoleon. He's always played it whenever he could.
you have good taste in friends. Yeah. So yeah, that Empoleon deck was basically the number 1 deck because that I liked because the history I have with it.
Okay.
So I took a lot of time for this.
Oh,
And
that's
second,
fine.
it's fine. Okay. Second place, I think, would be Magnezone Electric from I don't remember exactly. That was 2 years ago, I think. Basically, after Noble Victories came out, before Next Destinies.
Okay.
So this was before EXs came into the format, and there were a lot of playable decks at the time. And Magnezone Electric was a deck I liked a lot. I think it's I've done well sometimes with aggressive decks, sometimes with slower decks. So I can't say that there's a type of deck which I'm better with, but I tend to like decks that are about resource management, that are not about rushing the opponent, but just um,
Being careful.
plan,
Yeah.
yeah, planning over the course of a game, how I will deal, how I will take my prizes, how it will go, how the next turns are gonna turn out. And Magnesium Electric was a deck I liked a lot because well, you set up your stage two attackers, the Magnesium Prime, which could draw you cards. So from that point, you were always drawing cards and accessing everything in your deck. And mostly you had to plan out which opponent's Pokemon you were gonna knock out to take your prizes. And sometimes you were almost playing more against yourself than the opponent because you had a limited number of energy in the deck,
Yeah.
and you had to lock down them to take knockouts. So you could not afford to attack in a careless way. You had to thought, okay, so there's this Reshiram, I have to lock down 3 energy, so I maybe if I have 1 energy prize, I cannot afford to knock out 2 Reshiram because I could not have enough then. So I'm gonna take a knockout on this Pokemon on the bench or something like this. And yeah, there were games where it was almost just me thinking, like almost what was going on the other side of what my opponent was doing was almost not important. It was just mostly me taking consideration what the opponent could do and just planning that way. I don't know if it's very clear. It's clearer in my head than when actually with my mind, which well tends to happen. But
Yeah.
yeah, basically just resource management, knowing how much of each card you have left, what you're gonna use, and just use each card at the right time to win the game.
That's very
And
true. I
and
guess just in
yeah.
case if the viewers don't know, the Lost Zone you couldn't get energies out because it was just gone forever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like which was a shame because the electric, of course, was the one from Number Victories, which I think most people know,
Hmm.
which allowed them to get energy back from this card. So the idea behind the deck, if you didn't play at the time, was that you'd put a lot of energy, well, not a lot, but some energy cards in the discard with things like, well, a Super Turtle Stage Training or just Junk Arm.
Hmm.
We didn't have Ultra Ball yet at the time,
Yeah.
and use electric to bring the energy back to your Pokemon, mainly Magnesium Prime, and then use Magnesium Prime's attack to deal a lot of knockouts.
Yeah.
That was a deck that had basically shown just in the that format before Nexus is, because then Mewtwo EX came out and it was mostly too fast for the deck to deal with, and you cannot play such a slow deck with stage 2s and stage 1s anymore. So I actually did play the deck once more, because at some point I had the idea to play Pachirisu from Call of Legends in the deck, and it worked really well, and I won a regional championship with this. But
Okay. Cool.
after existing is, but mostly it was not a very good play anymore.
Yeah. True.
So that was the number 2 deck I liked, which I think there's a kind of common thread here because both decks rely on big stage 2 attackers that can draw you cards with,
Uh huh.
as a with a Poké Power or ability, which yeah, I tend to like this kind of of cards a lot. Like when Shift Try from Flash Fire came out, I like the card because it was the same, a stage 2 Pokemon with 140 HP, with an ability that could draw you cards, but basically it's just a worse Empoleon, so I never played it. So it's not really relevant. So what would my number 3 deck be? Well, I guess that would be the deck called Chenlock from the SP era, like in
Hmm.
the yeah, in the Magic
2010.
Stick Down on format, yeah, 2010.
Yeah.
Well, 2010, 2011. It was a deck I played the most that season. It was basically I liked SP a lot. It was, but I never really, um, I don't know, I never played actually Luxstrom, which was the most popular SP deck. I don't know. I think at the time I just felt it was too too mainstream for me, and I wanted to be different and everything. So I played Chenlock, which was a more control-based version of the deck, but like it was a version of Saberlock, which was the most disruptive version of the deck.
True.
But it has Blaziken FB, which was actually a very offensive attacker, could deal 80 damage for 1 energy plus energy gain. And yeah, I played the deck the most last season, and I don't have a lot of precise memories with the deck. There's not really one anecdote that I recall. It just the deck I played the most in the first season I played the game. I kind of learned a lot just playing that game and that deck, learning how to play against different matchups. During the course of the season, I made modifications to the deck, tried to tech for some matchups. Gyarados, for example, was a really difficult matchup.
True.
And yeah, I stopped playing the deck at one point in the season before the ACC because for stupid reasons, like Call of Legends had come out and there was Lost World, and there's in sometimes this card, well, in some places this card got hype, and people were saying that Losgar would be very good because it could win the game without even taking 6 prizes. And so I was a bit of panic, and I changed my deck for Dialga Champ before the ACC because it could deal with Losgar much better.
Mhm.
It was a terrible mistake because Dialga Champ I was simply not. I didn't have the experience with the deck, so I didn't know how to play it optimally. And it was the first time I went to the ECC, and I went like 3-5, and it was just bad because I lost 3 times to people playing Lost Jump, which was a deck that I knew how to, but I regularly beat when I was playing Chenlock. So it was that's just how I learned things the hard way. I just changed my deck 2 weeks before the tournament for something just based on theory without playing the deck enough, and it just went terribly for me. So
Yeah.
I learned a lot just by making that mistake.
I think.
I
Oh, you're good.
Yeah, no, just go ahead.
Okay, I was gonna say that I know a lot of people actually make that mistake when they're starting out, and then they think oh, my deck's not good or this deck's better, but I have a lot of playtesting. So I guess that's a key thing to point out. Is make sure just always stick with the deck you've been testing a lot. Why would you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, thinking about it, I actually made the same mistake like this year around the city championship period in winter, because it was a time when the metagame was not very well defined. It seems, looking at the result of city championships in the US, it seems like every week someone did well, won a city championship or went second or something with a new decks, or
Yeah.
playing with new cards, and it was like very hard to make a deck choice because you always had to consider what will people play. Will they play these things that appeared last week? Will they not have tested it yet? What's going to happen? And so I think that's all the time, and in that in winter, I think every weekend I tried out a new deck that seemed cool. Like, oh, Launderous Crobat, this is new. This seems good. I like the idea of the deck. I've played a bit of TCGO. I'm gonna play this weekend, see what happens. And every time I missed the top cut because I I kept playing something new which either had not tested enough with or just wasn't a good meta call.
Hmm.
Whereas other players did much better than me at that time because either they predicted the metagame much better and played chose better decks. That was my friend Mehdi, who I already mentioned. That was what he did. He seemed to always play the right deck for the tournament, or just some people just kept playing the same deck over and over,
Yeah.
which, I mean, there was one guy who made top cut a few times playing some kind of fighting deck, not Launderous Crobat, just Launderous EX, Lucero EX, or
Mhm.
Lucha. Don't remember what he played exactly, but some kind of aggressive fighting deck, which was, I think, not great in general, but he knew how to play it, and just playing over and over the same thing. In the end, it got him some championship points. whereas me just skipping from one deck to the other, just I had didn't work out for me.
Okay. So I guess to recap, your favorite decks are Napoleon. Then you said
Ma-
Chinlock. Or
Mag-
no, Chinlock was number three, and then
and Magnezone
Magnezone.
Electric
Yeah,
in
Magnezone
the
Electric. Yeah. So
back
you
the
like
hills or
yeah.
whatever you want to call it.
All right. So the next question is, what is your local scene like? How many players are there? Are they all competitive? Do some play for fun? I know some areas they, some leagues and locals they just like play for fun. They don't really play competitive. But what is your scene like?
Yeah, well, so I'm from Paris. Well, just very close to Paris, and there's a lot of competitive players around here. It's hard to define what's the local scene because some people don't know if I should call them local players or not because there's a lot of people going to it's well it's not that well defined, but yeah we have I don't have the rankings right now, but some of the best ranked players in France and some people who generally do the best at nationals are from Paris or the Paris region. So there's a lot of very competitive people around here.
Mhm.
Though to be fair to the other parts of France, because there's some kind of rivalry going there. People from south of France traditionally do better at Worlds. Like the three people who had the best results at Worlds all came from the south of France, but generally at nationals, the people from Paris or the north do better.
Okay.
Anyways, around here, so like there's not, I can't really give you a number of the number of people there are because it's hard to say really who's from who's real local player, and then sometimes have new players who stay or they don't stay, and so I
True.
can give you a number of players, but um, yeah, it's not unusual to go to a league challenge with 12, 15 players, and among them, like five or six are world competitor. So there's a high level of competition, I guess,
Okay.
for the even local tournaments.
All right. So I guess next up to regionals. How far do you usually have to drive for them? Like how far like is the drive to regionals for you?
Well, depends. Like there's originals who are close to me, like less than an hour away from in car or in train. I
Hmm.
which well, it's quite which yeah sometimes regularly go to tournaments by train. It's but well, to be a competitive player, I don't know exactly how it is in the US, but in Europe in general and in France specifically, you have to attend a lot of regionals, and so you have to go further away from just your local regionals.
Okay.
So and yeah, we ended up going to regionals in the southern French cities like Lyon or Montpellier, which are like don't know 5 hours away. For Lyon, like maybe 7 or 8 hours away from Montpellier. But generally, these are in the same weekend. In Europe, you always regionals are smaller than in the US,
Hmm.
so they only take one day, and often the organizer arrange for to have two regionals in the same weekend. Especially if they are not so far away. So when we see that there's a weekend with like two regionals in the southern part of France,
Yeah.
we try to arrange it. There's a lot of yeah travel, but it's generally worth it to play two regionals in 2 days. So yeah, generally the in general the time to go to regionals varies. As I said,
Yeah.
sometimes it's just like right next door. You take the train and you're here, the bus or something, and you're here in 20 minutes. And sometimes you go to the other part of France and just drive for 8 hours or take a train or something. I also personally like to travel and not to travel in general, but I like to travel to play Pokemon. And I ended up going playing regionals in other countries in Europe this year. Like I went into Belgium, the UK, Italy, and well, Germany and even Austria.
Hmm.
I all of these countries I played one regional in or regional level tournament for the Arena Cups, plus of course the ECC that's in the Netherlands. So thinking about it, I actually played in a lot of European countries this year, but I didn't have to do it. It was more like either well, like sometimes it's actually the closest regional you have. Being from Paris, sometimes it's closer to go to a regional in Belgium than it is to go to the south of France,
Hmm.
even if it's in the on the same weekend. And also sometimes I just yeah traveled because well there was no regional in France or close that weekend, and I wanted to play. In the case of Austria, for example, it was because well in Europe in general, regionals and in standard format. Well, that year they were in the standard format. We don't know for next year yet.
Yeah.
But there was no expanded. Actually, expanded was basically not played at all in Europe,
Okay.
except for some league challenges. And maybe I think no, I think in Switzerland for some reason they had the top cuts of the regionals being expanded format, but most countries was just standard all the time, except for the Arena Cups, which are regional level tournaments happening in Germany and Austria. There
Hmm.
are four of them in the year, so one every 3 months or so, and which are entirely in the expanded format. And I know that at some point for the third Arena Cup, which was in, don't remember, like uh, in spring, basically,
Okay.
um, like March or something, April. And there was one weekend where there was no tournament, nothing going on in France, and I needed some points, and I kind of wanted to play the expanded format, so I j- I arranged to go to Australia with a friend of mine. We took the train. It was like 8 hours to go plus 8 hours to go back. So we went on the Friday evening, played on Saturday, and got back to France on Sunday. So it was a long trip just to play for one day of Pokemon, but
Yeah.
like it was fun. It was a nice experience, and I also ended up winning that that tournament because seeing that I had to travel a lot just to play. Obviously, I placed it a lot. Tested a lot for this tournament
Hmm.
because I didn't want to to go
Basically,
there and just
basically waste
scrub
the
out.
trip.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Now, next up, I want to talk about Worlds some.
Mm.
Uh, what we know that you participated in Worlds, but what has been your best placement at Worlds?
Yeah, well, it's not great. I mean, last year I went 4 wins, 4 losses, and 1 draw, which was the best result I had
Hmm.
at Worlds. I've been at Worlds 3 times, and that was the best I did. So it's not great at all. The On the bright side, I mean, every year I seem to do better. I started, as I told you, in 2012, doing one by going 1-6, so it was not hard to do better. But every year I seem to get a bit more wins, so hoping to do even better this year.
Very sure. All right. So, keeping on the topic of Worlds, what decks do you expect to be big at Worlds?
Man, I don't know. That's And if I knew, I don't know if I would tell you, because everyone would like to know what they're going to play against. Now,
Mhm.
actually, the thing is, it's hard to know because at this time of year, there's not a lot of information. Most people, well, who are not going to Worlds are already testing for next year with Ancient Origins,
Yeah.
and they just so and people who are testing for Worlds obviously don't reveal their results in general. So we have to go by what happened at the nationals that were played in the same format, like the US and Canadian nationals.
Mhm.
But it's really hard to use those because even from one week to another, it can change a lot. If you look at Canadian nationals, like decks with Crobat were very popular. There was, I think, 6 of them in top eight.
Yeah.
So like everyone was playing them. I think to have just to be prepared against things like Night March.
Mhm.
And then if you look I think it was one week later, the US Nationals, maybe 2 weeks later, I don't remember.
Yeah.
But anyway, this changes a lot. Like there was only two Bats deck in top 16, and so things can change a lot from one week to another, and you have to understand exactly what what happened, why people changed play so different decks. Did they what did they think would be popular? Did they test? Well, basically, it's hard to when you see how the metagame can change from one week to another, just in the course of one week, and you know that there are like 6 weeks or something, or eight, I don't know. So yeah, something like 6 weeks
Yeah.
from the U.S. nationals to Worlds. You think that a lot can happen at that time. People can test a lot, see that something is good or not, and then maybe if they feel some deck is good and they test it a lot, then they find something that beats it, and so what is going to be popular can change a lot, and so it's very hard to predict what's going to be played. So you just have to test again the most popular decks against the most, I guess, the ones that you know will be played. Whatever happened, like I mean, it's hard to know how popular some decks will be, especially like fringe decks like Link Lang or that Hippowdon deck that got top 8 at regionals.
Mhm.
Will people test it, or will play it, or is that too weird for most people? It's hard to say,
Sure.
but you can always bet on some popular decks like Toad Garbodor, like various bats deck, various electric decks being played, I think.
Okay. So, if you had to pick one player to win Worlds besides yourself, who would it be?
Well, I mean, if you'd ask me like this, I would choose like one of my friends. I know like, for example, Mehdi Afi, which is, as said, another great French player who like has done well all season, just not at nationals, and that's why he's not qualified for. Well, he's qualified, but he doesn't have the day to invite.
Yeah.
Like I think he's a great, very deserving player who can do great at Worlds, but I'm also picking him because he's my friend. So I don't know how unbiased that is. If I had to choose, let's say about among people who are already qualified for directly for day two,
Okay.
which precludes me from choosing a French player uh, because we don't have our invites for day two.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I'd root for like some big name European players because I kind of want Europe to do well at Worlds because I feel like sometimes we're not really taken seriously
Hmm.
by American players specifically. Like they all, but I think that there's this kind of cycle where people don't know a lot of European players, so they don't care what happened in what happens in Europe. Like who won the like what happened at the ECC? Oh well, who cares? They're just European players. We don't know if these guys are good or not.
True.
And since they don't pay attention to Europe, they don't know exactly who won, who's good, and so they just don't know the players, and so they don't pay attention to them. It's just a cycle that repeats itself, and
That's
that's
very
why
true.
I kind of want some European players to break out on the international scene, like people like just like for example Igor Costa did by doing so well at Worlds, because then people know that this person at least is good, and they pay attention to what they do, and so on.
Very true.
So yeah, I'd like um, so yeah, if you had to pick someone who's already qualified, I guess like maybe something like someone like Martin Janusz, the guy with like 1,300 points in Europe, the number one run guy,
Uh,
because he's done well in the past. I think he's good, and also again, I'm not really unbiased because he's a friend of mine. Or otherwise, I know someone like Tordrik Leff from Norway, which I
okay.
don't know personally actually. Apart from the time he beat me at the ECC, just because he's someone that well I when I look, he's someone that always does well both at nationals and at the ECC, and I think he has a lot of good results on the European stage. And so yeah, I'd hope from him, or I would hope someone like him uh, would do could win Worlds just to have more uh, big name European players on the stage.
Okay, all right. So I guess the next question is, what was your ending record CP, and what was the deck that gave you the most points?
Uh, Ending CP number of CP 907,
Okay.
which makes me the one with the most CP, which is not qualified for day two already. For the record, I am ranked this season. I got 23rd place in Europe with only the 22 top players getting paid trips and invites, which is a bit frustrating.
True.
Uh, but yeah, I hope that I will do well enough to do well at Worlds on day one and be in day two anyway.
Hmm.
The deck that got me the most CP, well, going by the numbers, just I think it's Sesame Toad Slurpuff,
Okay.
just because that's the deck I played at Nationals, and I got second at Nationals, so that was 300 points. So one third of my points just like that, which is hard to top.
Yeah.
Um, but that's well. Though I like the deck a lot, and I played it a lot offline, I actually played it only at Nationals and at the ECC this year. It's not. I think the deck I played most would be Flareon, because I won a regional with it and made top eight at another one. Or maybe like Dunfun, which I played at the beginning of the season. These are not the decks I did mathematically the best with, but I feel that they better represent what I played this season.
Okay. All right. So I guess the next question is going to be, so the season's ended and we're going to start a new season. But if you can make one change to Pokemon, what would it be?
Uh, like the game or
It could be anything in general. It could be about the game. It could be about tournaments. It could be about the price support. If you can make one change, what would it be?
well, well, it will definitely be. Well, it's hard. I mean, we don't know yet how the invite structure will be for next year, especially in Europe, because we
Okay.
always tend to get the news far later than in the US. But I definitely want the invite structure to be changed because, well, some of it is frustration, as I told you. I'm just missed out on the paid trip and the day two automatic invitation. But the
Sure.
thing is, the top 22 structure, which I think was a good idea in theory, but it didn't work out in practice because um, there was just too many people taking advantage of the system. Basically, the way it worked in Europe was that most well, most if you want to get top 22 in Europe, you have to do well at nationals. Unless you had an exceptional season before, you will need to get 500, 300, maybe 150 points at nationals because a lot of other people will get these points from the high number of nationals that are in Europe.
Hmm.
And, um, and so you need these nationals points to compete with them. And so, but you also need to have done well in the rest of the season. And so coming into nationals, um, there were a lot of people who knew that even if they won the nationals, it would not matter. Like they would get two boxes and and a playmat or something, but they would not be invited get the trip to Worlds,
True.
since in most European countries, all of them except Germany, Italy, and the UK, there was no paid trip for the winner, and and they knew that most players also knew that if they even if they won it, they would not get enough points to be in top 22. So
Hmm.
what happened is that there was a lot of scooping in nationals, especially the later nationals, um, like people who got paired against their friends in top eight or even the Swiss rounds, and who knew, oh well, even if I win Nats, I it doesn't do anything for me, so I'm gonna scoop because I know that if you win Nats, then you go into top 22 and you get the trip and everything. And so there was all this scooping that happened in exchange for prizes sometimes, or just because people wanted their friends to do well, which I understand. But on the other hand,
It does hurt people too.
it hurts a lot of people.
Hmm.
It's just got people in top 22 which did not deserve it at the expense of other players. Which, well, I mean, it's maybe a bit arrogant to say this, but I think I did quite well this season, and I'm a bit frustrated that people got into 22 instead of me because they got their friends to scoop to them at nationals
True.
or things like this. And while I understand that, well, the systems that well, basically I think the system is at fault because it encourages players to do so, and it's, I mean, scooping is legal, so people say, oh, I have the right to do this and it benefits me and my friends, so we're gonna do this. And I think it's really, well, hurts the game, like the integrity of the competitive scene. And so that's definitely something I would like to see change, because I think that people don't will not stop scooping by themselves.
Yeah.
The system does not change as much as I would like them to.
I mean, I've heard every interview I've done so far, every single player has mentioned that. Like, it seems unfair that people can just scoop and basically just give them a free trip. So, Pokemon definitely needs to find some way to fix the
Yeah.
system because it's
Yeah, but you
definitely.
know, they say that it's unfair, but they still do it. I mean,
Yeah.
for the record, I mean, I could have got into top 22 too. Like the last tournament, except for some league challenges, you know, at the end of the season after nationals in Europe, there
Hmm.
was it was really a race for points, especially for players around, you know, the 2012, the 22nd spots. People who were ranked 21, 22, 23. Everyone was like, who's gonna get in? Who's not gonna get in? So people started traveling a lot to play in league challenges, just to get the highest number of points they could get.
True.
And what happened is, like the weekend before, maybe a week before the 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 well
The
the
announcement
race
of
closed. Yes,
okay,
the
like who got the
before
prizes.
basically, yes, exactly,
Okay.
the last week where people could get points, or the week
Hmm.
before that, there was the last Arena Cup in Germany, which, as you recall, is a regional level event in the expanded format.
Hmm.
And so, well, I went there, and lots of people, well, lots of people who were looking for points or hoping to secure an invite, either to get it or just to make sure that other people wouldn't get it. Uh, went there too, and so there was a lot of competition. And at that point, I was ranked 23rd, so, and I already had four uh, regional top eights in the season, so I needed to do top four better to get the points. If I
True.
got to top four, I got 30 more points, which like got me 4 or 5 more spots in the but so if basically if I got top four, I was sure to make it into top 22 in Europe. And
Okay.
and so I got made it to Top Cut. I went there with the guy I keep mentioning, Mehdi, my friend, who was the only other French player who could go with me. Who basically had, at first, he went with me because at some point he thought he still had a chance to get into top 22. By the time the tournament happened, he knew that he was out, but he still wanted to come to play and try to win.
Yeah.
And
True.
so and so we were both in Top Cut, and as fate would have it, we were matched against each other in top eight.
Oh no.
And you know the thing that's, I think, well, based on what happened at nationals, I think that a lot of people would have just had, well, I mean, most people would just have had him scoop, so I could get into top four
Hmm.
and be qualified for Worlds and get the trip and everything. And the thing is that I had been very vocal on the internet, on VRBank and everything, about how much I hated the fact that people scooped
Yeah.
everything. And so I asked Mehdi not to scoop. I asked him to that we play the game as we should, fairly. And well, he beat me.
Oh
Like
no.
it was not even close. He had the matchup. He knew he played better than me too, and so yeah. So I got eliminated by my friend from top 22 because I didn't want to get there in the top unfairly. Because the thing is, if Mehdi just scooped to me and I got into top 22, um, that would be like maybe it will be I would have deserved that spot given all I had done in the season, but
True.
someone who would have got into top 22 otherwise, that would be Ryan Morehouse from the UK, would be 23rd instead and be out of top 22. And like instead of the situation being unfair for me, it was just be unfair for him. So I felt it was not I could not justify doing that, and so yeah, like that's what happened. And well, I'm the decision I made not to to play the top 8 game was um, I think not many people agree with me because a lot of people think that scooping is part of the game,
Mm.
and even other people in France. I mean, so most people don't talk to me about it, but I think most people think that some have said that they don't understand why I did this, but it was a dumb move on my from me,
Yeah.
and so but yeah, just don't know what I want to say in the end. Just that well, I feel just wanted to say this because I think that it's, even if the system pushes player to like scoop and have a just yeah game the system to have their friends in top even if
Yeah.
it's but you know in a way that I think most people would agree is not really in the spirit of the game. I think
Yeah. True.
even if it's not illegal, I mean I can't call a judge because someone has a scoop to their friend, but I think still in the end I think we can agree that it's not a good thing for the game that people can get the invites based on this. And I think that even if the system is bad, I think we do not have to to game it and don't have to go against the spirit of the game if we don't want to.
Yeah. True.
That's a debate I had with some people on Verbank who felt that we have to take advantage of the system, and I said, but no, it's not. We don't have to. It's a decision we make.
Yeah. True.
And okay, I'm gonna get out off of this moral high horse because I know it's a bit annoying that I speak about this all the time.
No, it's no
Sorry.
problem. No, you're all good. I understand where you're coming from. I mean, people should, basically just earn their invites. Is basically the moral of the thing. Like, you should earn it and get your invite for sure, not just give your friends scoops. But I don't know. But
Hmm.
to wrap things up, do you want to give any shout outs to anybody?
Well, thank for doing this interview.
Well, thank you for doing it.
First of all, yeah, but I mean, I like to shout out also to the viewers who will who will watch this interview. I know that I tend to ramble a lot, and I hope my English was good enough. So I hope that some people will have made it to the end of this video. And yeah, also otherwise, yeah, shout out to I don't know the French community, all the players who I guess make it like who keep coming and make it the game fun, and well, who also all the people who tested with me specifically, because I know that a lot of people and a lot of the results I had this year I would not have made it so without all the people who tested with me. So like thanks to well Eddie, Hervé, and also other people which viewers will not know, and but they will recognize themselves if they see the video.
Okay, okay, sweet. Good man. Well, thank you so much for doing this interview once again, and
Well,
hopefully, what you gonna say?
No. Once again, thank you for
Oh
for doing
yeah.
it.
And hopefully you do great at Worlds this year. Hopefully your streak continues and you do even better this year. So you get that. You get the day two invite for sure. That'd be pretty cool to do that.
Yeah, I hope so too.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much for doing this once again. Thanks for everybody for watching this, and I hope everybody has a great day. All
Thank
righty.
you.
All righty. Bye.
Bye.